around 3, 2, 1. Voices of Leaders, Bold Conversations. Welcome to the Vivid Voices podcast show, Season 1, Episode 3. My name is Kirsty. I am the moderator for today's episode. Vivid Voices podcast is where we initiate bold conversations and let ourselves shine by using our voice to highlight certain topics. In this episode, we choose a topic which we can all give our thoughts on and we can relate to, which is planned traveler versus impromptu traveler. In this, we will discuss how different traveling styles enrich our travels and affect our experience when traveling to a different country. But first and foremost, I think it's very important for us for the audience especially, to know our speakers for tonight. So let me introduce you to Terence. Hello, Terence.
Hello.
Hello, good evening. So Terence is an airline management pilot and is currently residing in Malaysia. When I asked Terence what country has he traveled to, he gave me a very long list. He stated that he has traveled to Southeast Asian countries such as Brunei, Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, and even to European countries such as Germany, United Kingdom, Switzerland, Belgium, France, Netherlands, Vatican City, and Italy. He also traveled to Canada, USA, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Australia. When asked who does he usually travel abroad with, he said he has tried traveling solo, traveling with friends, with family, but at this point of his life, he is focusing on traveling with friends, with family, and company. Aside from Terence, we also have Hani. Good evening, Hani.
Hi, Kitty. Hi, everyone.
Hello, Hani. Good to see you. A bit about Hani. Hani is a trainer who focuses on cross-cultural communication and leadership. She's currently residing in Kuching, Malaysia. And when asked what country has she traveled to, she mentioned Brunei, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, Taiwan, Japan, Singapore, USA, as well as to the Bahamas. Whoa. When asked who she usually accompanied with, she says she traveled with her husband, her lovely husband. So that's very nice too. A bit about me. As for me, Kirsty, I am currently a student who will soon be traveling overseas for further studies. I currently reside in Brunei, and the countries I have traveled to are Taiwan, Malaysia, and Singapore. I usually travel with my family, or sometimes go on a school trip with friends. As you can see, we all have experience when it comes to traveling, and I can't wait to hear what our speakers have to say as we progress throughout the conversations. A good reminder to the audience, if you have any questions, you can always use the chat box below. And do give us some encouraging comments and emojis so we can help to brighten up the mood throughout the podcast. Woohoo! Alright. Is our speakers ready? Are they ready? Yes? Alright. So we know today's conversation is about planned traveler versus impromptu traveler. But what exactly is impromptu traveling and planned traveling? Let me explain to you. A planned traveler is someone who meticulously plans for their trip by making key decisions in advance. Decisions include your budget, your tours, means of transport, food, entertainment, destination to visit, etc. Usually the planned traveler will conduct research in advance and carry out his plan at specific time during his trip. Compare to the impromptu traveler. Impromptu traveler is someone who is spontaneous during the trip and makes decisions on a whim. Usually, impromptu traveler goes with the flow and doesn't really have a rigid schedule to follow. So, that begs the question, what kind of styles does these two speakers possess? Well, let's ask them. To begin this, I would like to call upon Terence. Hello, Terence.
Hi, Kirsty.
Hello again. I would like to ask, what type of traveler are you? Are you a planned traveler or impromptu traveler? And have you always been like this?
Kirsty, I think I am more of a planner sort of person, perhaps because of the upbringing I have. I tend to like to plan things a lot. For example, for trips, I research a lot and do a lot of preparation before we go for trips. And I do spend hours or even days or even weeks just to ensure that the trip will flow as smooth as possible. See, I usually go onto the internet and check on travel blogs, checking on reviews such as like TripAdvisor or even Pinterest, just to get some ideas on where the best spots are, where the best ideas are, on how we can save costs, save time, and at the same time having the best experiences. So I usually create very detailed itineraries, just like what you have shared, uh, by mapping out each and every day full of activities as much as possible. Because, or even things such as places to eat, or even rest stops. For especially if you're in Europe, checking or planning your rest stops, such as the toilets, are very important because they are quite costly. And even to the point where uh, let's say for this place you want to go to this attraction, this local attraction at that place, I will search for the best way or mode of transport to get there. I'll even calculate how many stations I need to go there, how much does it cost, what time is best to travel there. And in case I do miss it, I'll have a backup on which other lines of train or stations, metro I can take in order to get there. I have other alternatives to back up my plan. Now, and the other point is I tend to stick a lot to I'm very rigid when it comes to planning activities on certain dates, because sometimes when you plan for certain dates on certain days, they usually cost more on weekends or public holidays. So I tend to plan the most expensive trips or attraction midweek, even though it may be inconvenient throughout the trip. Yeah. And another point is I tend to stick to my budget very strictly. For example, if let's say we've we are there and we had breakfast for say $30 for breakfast, and then my budget was only $10. So when it comes to lunch, I would tell my partner, listen, for lunch we have to cut $20 out because we overspent for breakfast. So I'm pretty tight and pretty disciplined on the budget part when it comes to traveling. And then I would say I love to trust my research a lot, whereby it gives I would have high expectations on places I go, especially like you've seen lots of good reviews about this place, and it's a must go, right? So sometimes when it's overhyped, you've been there and you ask yourself, is that it? That's it? You plan so much just to get there. You took so much just to ensure you arrive there, and then it just took you perhaps 10 seconds to realize it's just that. The moment is just like that. So the other question you were asking was saying like, have I always been like this? Well, it depends on the different phases in life. So the interesting thing I would say is the time when I met my ex-girlfriend, whom is now my wife. So she actually changed my travel style significantly. She is more of an impromptu traveler, and she loves spontaneous trips. See, she loves the thrill of making spontaneous decisions. Um, for example, there was one trip to Belgium, and she decided to detour, ask me to take a train to this place called Bruges, outskirts of Belgium, another city. Now, on arrival, we noticed that there were no buses and taxis. So that was one of the time when I didn't actually plan. And guess what? I had to drag both our huge luggages for 40 minutes to our hotel. And after we checked in, uh, we wandered around and found actually there was this very beautiful place to soak in the beauty because it was so beautiful. I just don't know how to explain it in words. That it was so serene. I wish to return someday. So ever since then, I started to get addicted to being spontaneous, planning spontaneous trips because I don't feel that stressed out. Just go with the flow. And also, the special thing is traveling with our kid has taught me to be more flexible and adaptable because they seem to have their own schedules and needs. For example, we as parents, we want the best for our kids. So we got to know our daughter loves Sesame Street a lot. The first theme park we took her was in Singapore, Universal Studios. So we were in less than 30 minutes and she fell asleep. So guess what? We had to leave because we tried to wake her up and she was making a scene and we had to leave. And so we did not get to enjoy the place as much. So it taught us an interesting lesson then. So nowadays, I do try to strike a balance between uh, planning and spontaneity. I still do some research and make essential bookings, but I just leave some room for impromptu adventures and changes in plans. Now, this approach has made our travels more enjoyable and less stressful, again, allowing us to make the most of every moment. Back to you, Christy.
Thank you, Terence, for your sharing. I never knew you were a very planned traveler because judging by your laid back attitude, I always thought you are kind of a person who goes with the flow and whatever happens, it happens, that kind of person. And from your whole conversation, I feel that you're the type who is like, I will make my money's worth, which is quite cool. I like how you research the best destination, the best hotels, and try to save money. And I love the little stories of how your wife changes you as a person. It just shows that, our traveling styles is not always the same, not always rigid. It will be flexible, it will change throughout our life, and we have to be adaptable. Now, moving on, let's call upon Hani. Hello, Hani.
Hey, Kirsty.
Would you mind sharing what type of traveler you are? And have you always been like this when traveling?
Okay, cool. Awesome. So my traveling style is more like the song Into the Unknown. I'm that kind of person because my parents has always been that kind of person who packed their bags, get in the car and drove from Kuching to Kota Kinabalu when I was a little girl. And I thought that was one of the best experience I've ever had growing up. That kind of experience has shaped a little bit more of like more towards an impromptu kind of traveler. I like the idea of being a free bird. I'm a very feeling kind of person. So if I'm very stressed out for the past 1 week and I said I want to travel tomorrow, I will travel tomorrow, even if I don't have anything much in plan. And I like doing that because I like not knowing what comes next or just discovering new things. Like I wake up in the morning, I smell, when you wake up in the morning, you smell that very delicious coffee aroma with a very delicious smelling croissant. You feel like, oh, that is something that I'd like to try. So let me go downstairs and give it a try. So I thought. I end up getting married to a person who who, in my opinion, is super duper strict with money. So the thing about doing impromptu traveling is just like what Terence said, it costs slightly more because you want to do what you want right now and you want to buy them like those tickets and whatever access you want to have on the spot, it would cost a lot more. So marrying a person who is a little bit more strict on money means that I cannot always do that. Not like he stops me from doing that. It's just that you want to be in between. The funny thing about this is when I wanted to get married a long time ago, my boyfriend then, my ex-boyfriend, now husband, then said, okay, let's travel and see how far we can stress each other out, like together. And I said, great, like if we go back and think that this is not a good idea, then, like we know where to stop. And actually, we traveled. We traveled all the way to Medan. And I am not, I know that I'm an impromptu traveler, but I'm not really the nitty gritty going on the dirt towards backpacking kind of traveler. Not really. I'm quite sheltered by my parents. We have beautiful, hotel room waiting at the end of the day. I can order room service if I want to, but not my husband though. So he says, okay, let me decide what kind of travel we should do. And he decided we have to go through backpacking. Not only that, he wants to do one activity that I really considered 3 times before doing, hiking. And he wanted to do that on an active volcanic mountain. And I was like, okay, let's do this. Let's do this. By the time we reached to Medan, it was, I think, about a week before the conference. It was a Medan conference back then. A week before that, and he said, okay, let's go in. And I told him like, okay, at least, like this is another country, at least find out a little bit of where to go. And he said like, just trust me on this. He came in and he said, I've researched the cheapest way to get to the mountainous area. And I said like, what would that be? Let's go into a public local transportation. I don't mean the one that you buy, a ticket one way up. This is literally, like a roadside bus. You go on board with your backpacks and just drive on to smaller villages in Indonesia. And I was a little freaked out. I was a little bit freaking out because, well, one, we don't really speak their language as fluent. And then like number two, I've heard there was a landslide then. So from 5 hours of a ride, it became 7 hours. And all because my husband, then boyfriend, wanted to save money. But that's the thing. By the time we reach into the area, and he said, I've researched one of the greatest place to stay, but we don't want to book it right now because it is cheaper to book on the spot. At least that's what he researched. And I was like, are you kidding me? What if it's full? Where do you expect us to sleep on the side of the road? There was a lot of quarreling happens in between. But I think that was the best ever because then I get to see how stressful he can be dealing with someone like me. And yet I realized that it wasn't too bad because what I noticed in that journey was it happens to be that I enjoy the culture more. I thought initially I was a foodie, but it turns out I didn't. I actually like talking to the people in the villages. I was actually a lot more adventurous than I thought. I actually hiked and enjoyed them. I wasn't dreading waking up that super early in the wee morning to climb a sulfurous mountain. And surprisingly, by the time we reach back to Malaysia, we are still in one piece, happy. And apparently he made me feel a lot more addicted to it. So from an impromptu traveler, I've become a little bit more planned, but giving some room to be a bit more adventurous. Because it didn't, being able to plan doesn't make it, and it doesn't change the fact that I was also being adventurous. I could also go tomorrow somewhere, but being able to find out what are the cheaper way to do, still being my kind of travel, Just that I've learned to be adaptive to a little bit of both. So I can still sink into the unknown with, a little bit research on Google. Thank you so much for that. Like using ChatGPT and all that, while discovering point of the nearest point of next transportation in case you miss the other transportation, and does not really waste too much of our money. I will put it that way. And and now that we have a daughter together, our traveling style changes a lot more, because there are things like kids cannot travel 24 hours. My husband learned to adapt to my style too, because eventually, as you grow older, you do want a little bit of luxury at the end of that long journey. And he learns to realize that, okay, my wife sometimes needs her spa time, or maybe I need that 5 minute or 1 hour away from him, because you've been quarreling on the way down, and you feel better, and you come back and see each other, kind of thing. I think that would be like my kind of travel at the current moment. It changes throughout my journey, but I think I'm a little bit of both now.
That's very interesting. Thank you, Hani, for sharing. I always think that when you say that you're an impromptu traveler and you like to spend a little bit of money for a little bit of comfort, I feel that that's true. Like when you travel, you want to have a bit of comfort so that you can be adventurous to do other things. And unfortunately, you married a person who likes to plan to find the most cheapest option for him to travel. And I think that changes you a bit. You always have to have a plan B if something goes wrong. And that's definitely true. But I like how you know how to adapt and accommodate his wild planning spirit. So that's a good thing. I do understand that, once you get married, you have a kid, and with different traveling styles, it could get very difficult to travel together. So was it ever difficult to accommodate your husband's like traveling cheap habit with your kids mumbling, saying, I want to go Disneyland, I want to have some comfort, I want to go to shopping malls, with you being like, I need my spa day. Was it very hard to accommodate everyone's needs during travel?
Well, I would be with my daughter if she ever one day say, "Mommy, I want to go to Disneyland." I gotta make sure my husband say yes to all of that first. um, I think accommodating is not too hard of a thing to do. It's just how much you're willing to experience a new thing. I think that's the spirit of traveling. If you're unwilling to experience other kind of activities, I think that is when you're missing out on the key essence of traveling. I happen to be a lot more, being spontaneous. I happen to be a lot more chill with everything. Means that I'm okay with whatever you want to do. I'll just follow as long as I get to do something. Like don't make me wait in lines and not do anything. That's gonna be a problem. I'm a lot more accommodating in that sense. But I think not everyone could go from, or not, it's not easy for everyone to go from super laid back to super luxury, because it's always a mindset. When you travel luxury, you don't get to experience too much of thing. And I have to say, uh, I think that's totally wrong, because I think either you go for luxury or you go for um, controlled control finance type of travel. It has its own values. Like, for example, I went to Japan the other day with my parents, and if it's up to my parents, they would not try any of those omakase kind of thing, because Japanese culture, their food is usually the fine dining style. They do have your regular the big portion menu, but for most of them to enjoy the raw fish and raw seafood, there's a certain kind of way of serving, and that does not cost cheap. So for the sake of my parents, I actually planned that for them, and they enjoyed it. My mom said, like, I know it costs like a lot, but I've never tried anything like this in my entire life. And like, she thanked me for pushing her to do it. Because if it's up to her, if it's up to herself, she would never do it. Yeah, I think it's not too hard, Christy. Yeah.
No, that's true. That's true. I like the sentence where it's all up to whether you can adapt and really are willing to experience different things. And yeah, it's not that difficult. You have to open your mind to trying different styles of traveling, even though it may be hard in the beginning, but soon you'll find a bit of enjoyment and value from doing so. Now to Terence, just now you told me about like a story about how you like to budget, especially like taking off, like if I spend too much on breakfast, maybe I'm not going to spend so much in my lunch or doing amusement parks and things like that. Was it very frustrating to travel with your family members, seeing that you're very budget tight? Because it could put a strain and tension between family members for sure, being so planned and meticulous and budget strict, that kind of traveling style.
Right. On that, Kirsty, I would say before we had our daughter, I would still prefer sticking to the budget. And because we would like to, how do you say, fully experience with the limited budget we have at that moment of time. Now, with the changes in our life, having a daughter, of course, like what Hani mentioned, some luxury is needed, some form of luxury, or at least you need to be assured that your family members are at ease when they are traveling with you. They have to feel relaxed, right? Now, so before that, um, when it was just two of us, it was more of a compromise. For example, I would squeeze all the itineraries in, right? And I would force my ex-girlfriend to follow me. We must go here at this time. We must go there at that time. Well, guess what? In the end, we managed to take all the photos of all the places we targeted or planned to visit within limited time frame. And the on the other way of compromising with her is I actually listen to her at times where we go out of plan. For example, there was one time we were in London and she just suddenly mentioned, hey, why not we just go try this place for breakfast? And we actually woke up quite late. So we didn't prepare anything. It was cold. We didn't brush our teeth or wash our faces. She just mentioned, she checked on Google this.
Terence? Are you back? Terence not back. Well, I can I can say that from what Terence have said just now, he was saying something about experiencing with limited money. And I think that's a good challenge that, whenever we travel and we don't always necessarily have to spend so much money in order to enjoy something. Sometimes is you have to find something that is enjoying and just do it. Doesn't really need to cost a lot of money in order to have fun in traveling. So that's one thing I gather from Terence opinions and thoughts from just now. Now, moving on, I think one thing's for sure, one thing that we can all be certain is that there will always be unexpected surprises when it comes to traveling. Who knows, you may get lost during traveling, or you may miss your flight, your phone battery died, you walk with a heavy suitcase in the middle of nowhere. Who knows? There's always something that could potentially go wrong. Now, here's a question for Hani. This question is, what are some unexpected surprises that you have come across when traveling? And how does your traveling style help you overcome those hurdles?
Well, I think when it comes to those challenges, it requires you to use different parts of your, you know, like sometimes it's not always about feeling, it's all about solving the problem. As much as I am a spontaneous person, as much as I like to be, do whatever I want, circumstances are not everything you can do, or, like on do whatever you want. Because it could be in the middle of nowhere, there would not be a single bit of, Uber around that could pick you up and take you to a rescue, that it will forces you to walk. But because you have no choice, you just gotta. And I think you have to be open minded enough to actually do that. What helps me in those kind of times are the, like adventurous spirit of a traveler. Because I know that I would be enjoying my trip, or I could totally destroy my trip because of my own personal feeling. So in that kind of time, I could choose to be happy, or I could choose to just dread it all along and make everyone's life a living hell. But you don't want to do that, right? So regardless of the challenges, I like to put it in a different perspective where, okay, things could get worse. Like you're alive, no one kidnaps you yet, means there's a way out. And instead of instead of like annoying my husband, saying that this is your fault, this is your fault, we could always say, well, I've never done this before, this is something new. Like I never knew I could walk another 40 to 1 hour, another 40 minutes to 1 hour, but here we are walking and start talking about things that could mend or repair the situation, or think about like maybe next time let's do something else, like let's figure a different way to go to that place, something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I feel that, if we always feel pessimistic when something goes wrong in your travel, it would definitely ruin the whole traveling experience. And the most important thing is you have to be optimistic when things go wrong, and somehow, somewhere, you will be able to solve your problem. And there was like I did come across this kind of problem before, because recently I went to KK, and then halfway through the trip, my slipper was broken. Like the part of my shoe was just gone, like the middle where you have to wear your sandals. So for the whole KK trip, I was walking like I have a weird ankle. And for a minute, I was I was so anxious and pessimistic, because I was like, oh my God, how am I going to solve this problem? I'm in the middle of KK. I don't know where the hell am I going. But I think with a lot of patience and with a little bit of research, it's like traveling teaches you to be a bit of a problem solver. You have to be able to remain calm and adapt to situation at times. So with that, I think I was able to solve my problem, being a bit of an impromptu person, and you know just remain calm no matter what. And I see Terence is back. Terence,
Yes, I'm back again.
I would like to ask you a question, if you can answer.
Sure.
All right. So the question is, what are some unexpected surprises you have come across when traveling? And does your traveling style help you overcome such problems, challenges?
Right. Uh, this brings back to the statement or the story I was sharing earlier on. So we were at London looking for breakfast. It was quite impromptu, and I just went ahead with my wife because I was just hungry. So what was unexpected was, initially I peered through the window just to check if anyone was eating inside. Then I just told my wife, "Look, there's not much people, but somebody just looks familiar inside." And she just mentioned, "Oh, we're here already. Why not just try out, right?" So we went ahead with it. Went in. First thing I saw was, I opened my mouth and said, "Tony," and then the other guy sitting down looked at us and said, "Malaysians." So what was unexpected is that we actually had the chance to enjoy our breakfast with a fellow billionaire from Malaysia, the the owner of Air Asia. It was unexpected. We had quite a long chat because again there wasn't much people there, and we were seated next to each other, so we got plenty of time to chit chat. And because of that, managed to learn lots of things from the great guy himself. And I would say things such as this, which is why I would like to share, is if you're willing to compromise and be adaptive to change, just embrace the changes. You just never know who you're going to meet, what's going to happen. And in the end, guess what? We enjoy our breakfast. Of course, initially, I didn't want to go close to him because remember, we didn't brush our teeth, we didn't wash our face. If you have the chance to go on my Instagram, you get to see that photo of my messy hair, taking photo with the great man himself. But that was a once in a lifetime experience, I guess. It was worth it. Thank you, Kirsty.
Jeez, that is a very good opportunity. Congrats on you having that kind of like, wow, once in a moment, life of a lifetime kind of situation where you get to meet like a billionaire and get to talk to him and learn a bit of stuff from him. And I just think that from the story, we can kind of understand that, you know, anything can happen during travel, and it's up to you to take on the opportunity when it comes. So don't limit yourself when traveling. If you see something that you want to explore and you want to try, do try it because you never know what's gonna lead to it. So as the time is about to come to a close and we are about to come to close this podcast, let me introduce this segment of the podcast, which I call Hot Takes. In here, I will ask a question and the speakers will have to give their honest opinion on the question itself. Is it alright if I can start with you, Terence?
Sure, Kirsty.
In your honest opinion, do you think it's better to overplan compared to being spontaneous in the trip?
After going through life, 30 plus years of life, I tend to agree with being more spontaneous nowadays because it teaches us I believe it is able to train us in making decisions on the spot, making quick decisions. It helps you being adaptive to changes in life. It does help you in life skills. So I would have to say, even though I'm more of a planner, which I still am, I tend to be more spontaneous nowadays, even when it comes to planning my trips. I tend to love it. I don't over plan my trips, and I do appreciate leave more room or space in having more spontaneous activities throughout my trips. Yeah, that's what I have to share, Kirsty.
Thanks, Terence. Yeah, it's true that being a bit spontaneous and leaving room to do something. Like you can plan, you can meticulously plan and say, oh, on Monday, I'm gonna do this and this and this. On Tuesday, I'm gonna do this and this and this. But in between of all the plans, all the scheduling, you need to leave some time to really explore the culture and cuisines of the country. And I like your approach that though you are a planner, you do leave some time to be a bit more freer, a bit more going with the flow. What about Hani? What do you think about this topic? Do you think it's better to overplan compared to being spontaneous in the trip?
Well, Christy, a little bit more of planning doesn't hurt, honestly speaking. For a person who likes to just do things on the whims of it, I do realize that it might not be the best effective way to explore the place when you have a limited amount of time. Because let's face it, who has all the times in the world, right? Usually in one location you'll be there for about a week or so. And I think within that week or so you wanna, cover everything. So I just came back from California. And in this California is huge. There's a lot of parts that I want to see. So without prior research, I wouldn't have known, that is actually far. So, things like if I want to go to see the Hollywood sign up close, I have to drive a little bit further. Not only that, it has to drive uphill in compared to all the photos that people actually post. Like too far, it's not going to be nice. Too near, you're not gonna be able to see anything. You want the right spot, and the right spot usually are only known by the locals. And for that itself, it requires some level of planning. Like like I have to lug all my bags that has suits on it, but I don't want to, be super tired before an event. I don't want to be um too bored after the event as well. So a little bit of planning doesn't hurt. But I'm with Terence on this. I do think leaving room for some adventurous uh activities or something spontaneous would really add to the dash of the travel. Though it really helps with being a planner at the same time. Now, I think this cannot be dismissed. A little bit of both would really go a long way in traveling, maximizing it to the max.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Well, thank you, Hani, for sharing your thoughts on this topic. And yes, I feel that planning does help you make the best of your trip. And I love the anecdote that you say about even taking the best picture, you still have to plan those meticulous small things. If you want to have like the best experience, the best food, the best images, the best or plan your clothing on that day, what you're gonna wear on that day. Those needs planning, and undeniable. You need a bit of planning, even though you can be freer in traveling. You can plan in advance and then be free later on. It doesn't hurt to plan later on, like before the trip. Thank you very much, Hani and Terence, for sharing your thoughts about this question. And as we're about to come to a close, I would like to summarize the conversation for today. Both speakers share their experience as a planned traveler and impromptu traveler. They share the dynamic between their families when it comes to having so many different traveling styles, and offer some advice when it comes to having different traveling styles clashing with each other. From both of the speakers' perspective, we understand how they use their traveling styles to overcome unexpected challenges during their travels, and most importantly, hear their honest truth when it comes to planned traveler versus impromptu traveler. So that leaves us with the one and only one question. Planned traveler versus impromptu traveler, which is better? Well, I think we can all agree from this discussion that it depends on you and what suits you best. If you're the type to make plans in advance, that's your forte. If you are more carefree and like to go with the flow, being spontaneous might be just up your alley. What matters is that your traveling style should help you enjoy your trip to the fullest. And you should always be prepared when anything unexpected were to arise. Be prepared, be open-minded to discovering the world, and most importantly, enjoy the moments during your travel. Before I end the podcast session, is there anything that our speakers would like to add? Any advice which you like to give to our fellow audience? What about you, Terence? Any advice?
I would just like to share that yes, I do agree with you. It depends on your resources in terms of finance and time. It's still important to have a detailed itinerary, but try not to overpack it. With the surge of demands in flying, I would like to advise all of you to pre-book flights, pre-book your accommodations, and even your activities that is expected to be full. Of course, above all, do lower your expectations because we want to enjoy more on our trips, right? And above all, travel only when you are healthy. Make sure you are healthy, otherwise you will not get to enjoy your trip. That's all I have to say. Back to you, Kirsty.
Thank you very much, Terence. And Hani, any advice would you like to give to our fellow audience?
It's not of an advice, but it's more like an encouragement for those of you who are still thinking whether or not I should travel or if I have to make a perfect traveling plan. There are days when you wake up and you want to look forward to that thing that is going to happen 3 months from now. And I think that comes into play. But at the same time, if you feel like next week is a good time to go, though you didn't have anything in prior plan, you could also do that. It's the best of both worlds that counts. And remember, only you can determine how happy you are on a trip. You make the best out of the trip, irregardless or not. Whether you get to see that Hollywood sign, because FYI, I did not manage to see that Hollywood sign because of my inability to realize that my two-man companion loves shopping. So we missed the time, but you know what? It's okay. I'm not even mad at them. I was actually enjoying my time with them. It only gives me a reason to fly back to Hollywood one day and to actually finally take that photo. Things happen, and only you can determine how happy or not happy you are. And I hope you guys go and travel. There's a lot of sales out there. Go and travel, go. Back to you, Kirsty.
Thank you very much, Hani. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to the podcast. And we see you soon. Over and out.